My pleasure to be here this afternoon, and thank you all for giving up such a beautiful afternoon outdoors to come inside and think a little bit about digital video. I did struggle over what to talk about. There were several other sort of topics I was I'm involved with, personal health records being one, and Sri and I have done some collaborative work on that. But I thought this is probably pretty much what I've been doing for quite a long time, and probably has some relevance to what people do in communications and journalism. So the idea here is I'm going to go through kind of a very high-level view of digital video as kind of an emerging phenomenon that I think is going to have a big impact on information and communication. And then I'll focus on three sorts of projects that we've been engaged in, one over the last decade and the other two more recent, that I hope will each have some suggestions or indications for this top-level theme, and then try to close with some more reflections on that and some discussion about what I hope will be a little bit at least provocative. So here's the outline. Digital video is blurring these boundaries that exist, and I'll try to describe what I mean by that in each of these three examples. I'll spend most of the time with the Open Video Project, which I started right when I got here in fall of '98, and there's sort of three main objectives there, and we've learned a few things over those years. The VidArc project, which is an archiving project for video context that has been going on for about 3 years now, and then the more recent YouTube channel here at UNC, and some of the at least preliminary experiences we've had, and then we turn to the theme again. So that's the outline. Digital video. So a lot going on with digital video. I'm going to put it in a digital library context because that's where a lot of our work in SILS gets embedded. But this is really just exploding. If you've sort of looked at YouTube statistics, it's pretty amazing. This was in the fall, 65,000 videos a day. New videos a day being uploaded to YouTube. 20 terabytes a month. You just got to have a lot of disks spinning for that. 100 million views every day. 100 million views every day. So that was in the fall. Some people claim that YouTube alone is consuming between 1/4 and 1/3 of the entire internet bandwidth. Now, YouTube is happening right now, but clearly there are going to be competitors. There are new things happening that we should keep in mind, and I'll say some more about that later on. Now, there's been a long-standing research community in digital video, 20 years or so, that mainly in the engineering, computer science, signal processing sort of area, with lots of work on indexing video, on compressing video, on communicating video, and mostly though from an engineering perspective. There are a good number of digital libraries that have video. The Internet Archive is pretty well known. There's a bunch in Europe, and one that is here in the United States that actually doesn't get a lot of play, although it should, is the Research Channel out of Washington State, where they work with a lot of universities and research labs and industry to record lectures and then make them available. So there's a lot of video out there that's generally accessible already. Most of this attention here has been on system building. Building up the collection, trying to figure out how to manage it, and not a lot on services, the actual what do people do with it when they're actually watching this or reusing it. And that's really what we've tried to focus on. A lot of commercial attention, so lots of labs and companies. If you're CNN, you've got your $1 million solution to manage your video. Locally, WFMY in Greensboro has actually been taking the lead for Gannett stations to actually start to archive and their digital video assets and then make them available on the web. So I mean, these things are happening where the money is, but that doesn't tend to be sort of on the kind of research that I'm interested in terms of the human side of the services. There's a retrieval track on video that's been going on for a number of years where the research community studies, again, a little bit on the signal processing engineering side, how can we chop up video and make it more indexable, that kind of thing, a little bit on the user side as well. In the marketplace, lots of advances on the kinds of tools for capturing video. So the flip cam right here is sort of one example. For 150 bucks, you get an hour of flash memory video that's actually not bad quality. And so you basically have a whole lot of sort of middle school kids who are starting to capture video. If you've ever seen the skateboarders around here, they've got better video equipment than most of us. Right? And those are the high-end users. What we don't have really, though, are good editing tools or ways to actually manipulate this. The interesting thing about that flip camera, not that I sell these things, is you stick it into your USB port and it just runs. The software's there and you don't have to like insert a disk and downloads install the software. It just works, and it's a very sort of crude editor, but at least it's something that for $150 a young kid can actually start to do video production. And I think that's what we're going to start to see big changes in the years ahead as more and more young people acquire these tools and just think of them as just kind of second nature. It's the way we communicate. So that's really why I think we're on the cusp of what we might call natural, where video is not this kind of external thing that somebody creates in a very high production studio environment, but it's something that just everyone does, just like we talk. Now, that's a big leap. Let's keep that in mind, because I want to try and convince you that we're moving in that direction, and then think about what the implications for that might be. So here's a little more theoretical point of view. I mean, traditionally, video is a crafted expression. It's got multiple channels. We know about that. In the case of digital, the channels are all digital, so the audio and the visual channels, as many as there might be, are in digital form rather than analog form, and that's important. Video is visceral. I mean, it has effects that are not just intellectual. It's just not a message carrier, but it actually affects people. I mean, we can all think of videos or images that we've seen that just startled us, or give us the goosebumps, or have very powerful effects on our lives. A poem can do that, but this is much more immediate and visceral. It's a descendant of film, but it's different. One of the main differences, I don't think we've seen much advantage taken yet, is that you can incorporate behavior in the video. And what do I mean by behavior? I mean programs. So that the video that you watch tomorrow, that was the same video, if you watch it again, it actually looks different. Because of the fact you've watched it or somebody else has watched it, there can be if-then conditions in the actual content that change the way it's rendered and expressed. Now, we haven't quite gotten there yet. I mean, think of it even in a simpler way, hyperlinks. We all know about hyperlinks on the web where you can jump from place to place. Well, we don't even have really good hyperlinks in video, where you can be watching the video and go click and jump someplace else. Maybe like a little pointer there, and you can say, oh, I want to jump to the conclusion, or I want to jump to the part of the plot where that character said that. I mean, Lost kind of does this, in a sense, with both on TV and through their web support services, which are actually quite deep and interesting. And so we're starting to see people begin to play around with this medium in a new sort of way. So that's the big difference. And we haven't quite seen the implications of behavior incorporated in the video yet. But I think that's coming. A word about digital libraries, theoretically. Digital libraries are not like physical libraries. They're not just these kind of edifices with physical artifacts in them. As powerful and beautiful and important as they are to us, the physical libraries, digital libraries are different. They're journeys. They're active. They're processes. And so we want to think of them that way. Our own work with open video has been to think of video as reusable objects. So we've always tried to provide people with files rather than streams because, at least in the early days, files were reusable. People could grab them, they could edit them, they could change them, they could build them into other things, whereas streams were really, real media was terrible to try and manipulate. In fact, the whole purpose for it was to try and keep you from grabbing those files, right? But now, in today's streams, it's actually possible to download things, as we'll show you in a few minutes. So the implications here, maybe one thing to think about that's a little scary is, what would you do with video of every street corner in Manhattan 24/7 forever? See, I mean, that's happening. And no one entity probably, well, maybe the city of New York for a while, would have that and be able to sort of do anything with it. But what would you do with it? The thing that is a little bit interesting to think about is that it's not just the city of New York who might have that, but you personally, you could have it somehow. What would you do with it? What would you begin to sort of make out of that? If you did a research study, that'd be one thing, but what if you were just some kid who wanted to play? You could put together some pretty interesting montages, I would think. That's the kind of world we're moving toward. So the implication here is that digital video is crafted expression, as it always has been, but it's also observation and it's free expression. That's not quite so crafted. So let me move to the Open Video project. This is about a 10-year-old project now. There's sort of 3 high-level goals. There's a practical goal: build a digital library of video that people can use. Mostly the education and research community. That was our sort of main audiences there. From a design point of view, we are interested in sort of exercising and developing this Agile Views design framework, which is a way of thinking about design, in which people should be able to easily change views and do it in an agile way. So that's kind of it became a test bed for us to develop this design framework. And then from kind of a more theoretical research point of view, a set of methods to really understand how people make sense of video, especially when they're retrieving video through what we call surrogates, which I'll spend probably more time than you'll want me to. This actually has its genesis years ago at the University of Maryland with a project with the Baltimore City Public Schools. We've had funding from a variety of agencies over the year, lots of collaborators. Right now there's about 4,000 or so videos in Open Video, all available for download. They've been copied in a lot of places, the public TV channel in the UK, the Internet Archive, a bunch of universities in Asia have downloaded them, and also Google Video, before they bought YouTube, had about 1,000 of the videos, the NASA videos. So they're kind of replicated around. We don't have a whole lot of traffic, about 40,000 unique visitors a month. It sounds like a lot, but it's not really if you think about something like iBiblio or even the UNC website. We've always tried to provide at least MPEG-1 formats, although we're going to start moving toward an MPEG-4 format for everything, just because it's high quality enough and it's much more compressed. And these are files that people can reuse. And we're an open archives provider, which makes it easy for people to harvest our metadata. And we have these ongoing user studies of this surrogation work. Okay, so that's where I'd like to move next. What is a surrogate, or what was a surrogate?
Can you tell us what's in the 4,000 videos, or is there
some there's a bunch of different collections. So we have about 500 videos from NASA that NASA broadcasts on their education channel. There are 4 series for elementary and middle school children, and then one's an adult series. Not that kind of adult series, for older people.
Nudity in space,
yeah, no. And I got to get that right. I've made that same error a couple times. We have probably the largest collection of HCI, human computer interaction videos. We have all of the ACM Chi videos going back to the The videos that they're juried videos at the Human Computer Interaction Conference each year, and so we've gotten those videos and have them. We also have all of the Human Computer Interaction Laboratories videos for 20 years from the University of Maryland's Open House series. We have the Prelinger Archive, which is just a whole, he calls them ephemeral videos. These are videos that he bought up over the years and makes available for free. He also has a stock footage company that does very well because people get this sort of low quality stuff and then they want the rights and some high quality version. What else is there? Oh, we have some things from New Zealand bungee jumpers. It's just a whole.
So there wasn't any central theme of the collection? No,
and we could have gotten lots of funding if we had sort of focused on one thing. And the idea was to actually try to build a collection for the research community that was diverse. And so we were very opportunistic rather than sort of systematic in our collection development policy. And whether that was the right thing or not, I don't know. But it's a pretty eclectic collection.
And when you say research community, do you mean?
Oh, video retrieval research community mainly.
Okay.
And then the education community. Probably at least half of our users are teachers who use these videos in classrooms.
Got it. Okay.
So what's this surrogate? Well, it's a compression. That's really all it is. It's meant for human consumption, not really machine consumption. We were familiar with lots of kinds of surrogates, abstracts and profiles. And what's changing is that the classical kinds of surrogates that we've had for mainly textual materials are now starting to morph. And so your avatar in Second Life is a surrogate for you, which is kind of a different way of thinking about surrogates. Surrogates enable decision making quickly without having to consume the entire real-time object. They therefore save human time. They can also save system and network time. So the snippets in Google that you see before you actually click on something is a kind of surrogate. All right, so here's the kind of first blur. It seems to me that what's happening is our theories of surrogation, which have been developed in library science mainly for the last 30 or 40 years, are now starting to be too fragile and they're breaking. And that's because our ways of describing things, which used to be completely kind of distinct and separate from the object that's being described, is now starting to all get kind of blurred together because it's all digital. And so this makes it a little bit messy. Maybe this will all work out and we'll develop new kinds of constraints and new kinds of properties that will help us to actually get a handle on this again. But right now it's pretty much a mess. I want to sort of use a figure to try and do what those words say. So here's the kind of way things used to work mainly. I have the world, and then there's the physical and the mental world, and somehow we have an information object gets created, an expression, some human expression, and these information objects were primarily of two types. They were either recorded in the form of, say, text or some kind of physical recording, or they were ephemeral, conversation out there in the ether, and the ephemeral stuff didn't go much further than that. We all know that from courtrooms and politicians, right? Do you remember what you said about gun control 3 years ago, Senator, pick your favorite senator last night? Oh no, I don't remember at all. I got to win Pennsylvania votes. Sorry. So that's the ephemeral part, but the recorded part got indexed somehow, and it got assigned metadata. Right? It got put into databases, and it got reused in a sense. And these were the hooks to allow us to reuse those things. So the metadata part are the things that are usable by machines or people, and the surrogates are really mainly just for people to consume. So Dolby settings, no human wants to ever know what all those things are to make your music sound good. But the machine better know all those settings. That kind of metadata is for the machine. For us, it's the title of the song or the artist or whatever, something that's meaningful to us. And we can consider. Now, that's the sort of classical way things work. What's happened, I believe, is that the ephemeral stuff is now getting captured. And it's being recorded more and more. Moreover, these information objects themselves are indistinguishable from the metadata or the surrogates. They're just all bits. You know, it used to be that you had, oh, this is the title. I see it, and it's in the card catalog. It's on a card. It's something physical. It's different than the book. The book is not here. The book is in the on the shelf somewhere. It's distinct. It's separate. It's discrete. Now it's all just a bunch of bits, and it's all on your screen. It all looks the same. How do you begin to distinguish between these blurs of metadata or secondary kinds of representations from the primary? So this is kind of the problem we have, that because everything is digital, we are in a situation where these really useful distinctions are sort of blurring and breaking out. So how do we study these things? So over the years, we've studied sort of 3 classes of surrogates: textual, visual, and audio, and now our focus is on multimedia surrogates. We try to actually do a cost-benefit analysis. We want to maximize meaning per unit time, so that's our goal. That may not be the only way to study this, but that's sort of been our sort of approach. You know, we want to try and minimize transmission time, maximize compaction rate. Compaction is not compression, it's the sort of human time that it takes. So if I can make sense of this of a 1-hour video in 60 seconds, that's a 60-to-1 compression, big win. Right? And cognitive processing time. And we look at this both from performance and preference point of view, or effective kinds of measures, and we find that sometimes there's a trade-off. Our research framework looks something like this. You might think of the effort and outcome as being, for some amount of effort, this is the cost benefit, you get some kind of outcome. So these tend to be our dependent variables, the amount of effort and the amount of outcome. And then these tend to be our independent variables. You know, of course, we'd like to control the tasks and the video characteristics and the individual characteristics, and these are the things we typically manipulate, is the kind of surrogate that in a given study. So this is the overall frame. Oh, by the way, all these slides are up on my web page, and you can go and look at them at your leisure. So here's the kinds of surrogates we've examined. Storyboards, which are just a kind of an array of poster frames from the video, hopefully good frames, representative frames, salient frames, at different rates or amounts, and sometimes with text words or audio keywords attached. We've done slideshows, which are basically blast them at you right in the center of the screen as fast as they can go, and this actually turns out to be really effective, but people hate it. You can go really fast. Like a quarter of a second is way too long. You can look at these in a tenth of a second, 100 milliseconds, and recognize stuff. But people don't like them because they don't have any control. So this is where the performance starts to interact or actually counteract preference. So people will actually give up more time and they prefer the storyboards to the slideshows or the fast forwards because they have control, even though it takes them a little bit longer to view them, and even for the same kind of recognition and understanding.
So would a storyboard come at the beginning of a video clip, or?
It would actually come when you do a search, right? So if you do a search and you get back your usual million hits, you don't want to watch a million videos, and certainly you don't want to download them, right? So what you want are snippets. These, in a sense, are like the snippets you get in Google, the first sentence or two, that gives you a quick, oh, do I want to look further? I mean, my view is actually that we want a whole cascading set of these kinds of surrogates with increasing levels of detail until people can really be sure, yeah, I really want to watch that. And then they go for the full thing. Now, YouTube actually is interesting because it kind of counteracts that, because the typical YouTube video is very short. So the question is, well, in open video, we've always dealt with relatively long videos, even though I've tried to chop them up into pieces for reuse. But if it's only 4 minutes, is it worth taking a minute to consume a bunch of surrogates to decide whether to carefully watch the 4 minutes? So somewhere there's a break point where it might be worth just watching the raw video. And that's kind of an interesting question in its own right, not one that we're particularly focused on at this point. Fast forwards, really interesting. Fast forwards are actually popular and they work, and people like them, and they're just like, you know, kind of one of these, why didn't we do this earlier? So we've had fast forwards at Open Video right from the earliest days. The Internet Archive now has fast forwards, and it's really simple to do. You just take every nth frame and, you know, blast it on the screen, and people like them, and they actually make sense of things. Now, it doesn't have audio, and so it's still strictly visual. Lots of other sorts of things. The ones we're working on now are audio, spoken descriptions, spoken keywords, and sometimes automatically extracted, sometimes manually, and then combined. And so this is sort of where most of our work is now, is on the actual multimedia surrogates, which it's interesting that they just don't exist. I mean, we haven't had much experience with them, and so there's an interesting question that arose. I'll get to it in a minute. So here's the way we do these studies. We provide a series of different tasks. We've got over the years 6 or 8 different tasks for different kinds of surrogates: recognition, selection type, and generative, which are harder. Did you see the tree? Did you see a bird? Or write a description. There's a generative free text gist writing, and so on. So I actually don't have time to sort of really go into all of this carefully, but the idea is that, you know, we're trying to have a series of tasks that we can use to measure people's, I'm going to say, understanding in quotes of these surrogates as quickly as possible, and we measure accuracy, confidence, the time to completion, both of the viewing of the surrogate and the response to the task, and then various affective measures. And so those are our metrics. Over the years, lots of user studies. These are just some of them, various dissertations, master's papers, and publications and conferences that have been done using different surrogates. Our current work with audio surrogates is to compare spoken descriptions and spoken summaries. We're also now working with some audio skims to try and sort of extract little snippets of audio to try and give some sense of quick understanding of the video. We'd like to combine those with visual skims. And so the really interesting question is, should they be coordinated? Yeah.
When you do stuff like audio or visual skims, are those all manually done? Like someone goes in and tries to select relevant ones, or have you tried automatic
both
sampling? Okay.
Yeah, we do both. I don't think we can, manual is not going to scale, so we definitely have to go with automatic. But right now, manual works best. So here's an example of just like a visual summary of audio. I don't think this is the way to go, and I'm not going to sort of spend much time on this. We've tried various kinds of visual displays for audio. Now, if you're trying to give people visual and audio surrogates, this will definitely overload the audio, the visual channel, if they're also watching a fast forward or something. So of course it's not going to work there. I'm actually going to skip this and get to the sort of heart of the matter. This is the current sort of burning question. As part of doing some of these studies, we noticed that sometimes people would play things over if whether they were doing fast forwards, storyboards, or the spoken descriptions or spoken keywords. And we saw people, in the case of conditions where we combined them, because we were interested in the multimedia case, where they close their eyes and listen, then they play it over watching, or they turn away. And so we began to wonder about this synchronicity issue. And if you go into the literature, there's a ton of literature that says, well, film and video works because the channels are coordinated. And we've got lots of evidence that for learning effects and retention effects and all the good stuff in life, that coordinate those channels and you're going to get a better overall effect. We've assumed for years that that should also be the case for multimedia surrogates. But as we began to actually build some of these things, we said, it turns out no one's really studied this. So what we're trying to sort of figure out now is what are the trade-offs between coordinated multimedia surrogates and synchronized. So we've got some studies underway. Here's kind of a graphic of the difference. Think of it this way. We've got these visual channels and we've got these audio channels. In the simplest case, one of each. We could sample, if we're going to sample the most salient pieces, we could sample across the entire stream. So this is the coordinated. The other approach would be we could sample within each channel and optimally pull out the most salient imagery and the most salient audio information, and then combine them and play them back at the same time, which is the better solution. Well, we don't know. We have some evidence that in some cases one is better than the other. This is the sort of current Yishao's Song's dissertation will, I hope, answer a good chunk of this. You might argue that the fact here that you basically have pre-processed all this is going to make it faster for people, but the fact that they spend less time actually thinking about it may lead to less understanding. So there's this trade-off between recognition and understanding or sense-making. Whereas here, if they actually have to work a little bit, they might actually get a much better understanding and make a better decision about whether I should actually watch this video. So that's kind of part of the trade-off we're kind of playing around with. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears now, because what that sort of leads me to is to suggest that even in something as kind of basic as surrogation for video, we're wondering, well, what happened here in this digital realm? Something's a little different. There's a blur. There's a sort of a change from what we've done classically in the past. So I'm going to move quickly to the second project. This is the VidArc project. And you can find out about all these web pages and so on. The problem here is, how do we preserve video? So Library of Congress is funding this, the National Science Foundation. How do we preserve video? But preserving the bits of the video is just kind of, it's an engineering problem. Lots of people working on that. We're interested in the context surrounding the video. How do we sort of try and preserve that? So we're focused on some specific topics, the 2008 presidential campaign, and some other topics. And I'm going to talk mainly about the campaign at this point. The idea here is we're harvesting the video, metadata, and all this contextual activity around the video, and we are saving it and doing some analysis. So what should we save so that 50 years from now, people can understand, why did 400,000 people watch somebody put Mentos into Coke bottles, that crazy video that, went viral and everybody watched. Who cares? And why? Who can understand that? Well, if you don't have the context for what was going on in the world at the time, the historians will never know why. So that's kind of the issue here with even more important things like elections. So the archival theoretical problem is, how do we extend our classical documentation strategies to the web? And folksonomy is kind of one of the sort of things we'd like to capitalize on. If we just get more people involved, then that might be a good thing. And leads to a bunch of challenges. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I want to get to some of the results here. So here's kind of a scenario. Let's say you're an archivist for let's look into the future. Maybe Hillary Clinton wins the election and there's a presidential library. And you're the archivist. So what do you actually gather? Well, you're going to have all the primary materials because you are the presidential library, right? But how do people make sense of that? You've got to get the New York Times stories, the London Times stories, the CNN newscast, all the stuff that was going on in the world at the time to really get an understanding so that somebody 50 years from now can kind of try and understand what it was like. So our notion is, well, there's a bunch of other stuff going on here that's really below the surface. How do we begin to to sort of gather this. So that's the kind of use case scenario, if you will. So here's what we do. Every day we send out 56 queries, 6 general queries, presidential election, and 50 names of the candidates who were in Wikipedia early in 2007. We use YouTube's APIs and screen scraping to actually grab those videos. We do this every day. We had a couple days where we had maintenance issues. We get the top 100 results. We download the videos. We download all the attributes, all the comments, the position in the ranked list, so we know how popular it was, at least for that query that day, its rankings, its ratings, all of that good stuff. And one of the things that Fred Stutzman was doing is actually monitoring this in the blogosphere as well. And so we've been looking at comparing what's going on in the blogosphere to what's going on in YouTube. So as of today, here's where we sit. We've done 273 crawls just for this query, right? I mean, for this topic. We've got these other topics going too. Just under 20,000 unique videos, 500 million views. Just these videos. And we're not talking about all the political videos, just the ones that have been viewed 500 million times. Can you get your mind around that? Yeah. Now, what does a view mean? Well, somebody clicked on it. Did they actually watch the whole thing? Well, that's different. But that's a lot. And that's just these videos. So there's a lot of activity out there. There's a paper that'll be in the Joint Conference on Digital Libraries in June that sort of compares the blogosphere to the YouTube political scene. So here's what I think this means. First of all, YouTube is becoming as much conversation as an information source, because you've got all these comments. Should have focused on that? 3 million comments. Well, people entered something. Now, a lot of it is really nonsense, but some of them are quite thoughtful.
So, Gary, do you have at least some preliminary data of what Fred is collecting?
Yeah, that's the JCDL paper. There's whole layers of video representation that are very strongly culturally dependent. There's all these video illusions. So we had Obama Girl, which you may have heard of on YouTube for Obama. Well, now we've got a bunch of McCain girls. There's McCain girls, there's McCain Obama Mama, and it's just these things take on sort of a life of their own, and then people do takeoffs on the takeoffs. So remember the Super Bowl ad that Apple did 100 years ago, Think Different? Well, there's a video against an Obama video against Hillary, Vote Different. That's a takeoff there. Now, if you don't have the context and you just saw that video 50 years from now, you'd go, I don't get it. Somehow we need to try to build some around this and so the question is, well, what's the around? Do we just harvest the entire web and have to have that? Well, that's not going to fly or scale, right? So we need to be selective, and that's a good arguable problem. I don't think the internet is quite mainstream yet, though, so before we get too far away, if the internet predicted who would win the election, well, it'd probably be Ron Paul on the Republican side, who probably half the world hasn't heard of.
Can you back it up one slide too? Do those relationships there is there anything predictable among those relationships? That is to say, at a certain level, views are related to a certain predictable level of comments to.
We'd certainly like to explore that. One of the things that we were hoping to see, and we're trying to look at the data, is could we predict when somebody's going to drop out based upon the number of comments, the flow of the comments that are coming in their campaign. Now, there's been enough people who have dropped out over the last year where we can begin to go back and look at that data. On the surface, when we've done some of our preliminary analyses, we have not been able to say flat out, look at they're petering out, therefore you can sort of predict that they're going to drop out. Or you can predict that when there's a debate, there's probably going to be a lot more chatter. And we see some of that, where there'll be some spikes in the comments or the viewing.
Well, in the traditional media world, a certain level of emphasis on the media, so to speak, it's there's an igniter point, then it goes up on public opinion surveys. Goes below that point, it drops below it. I'm just curious if you had anything like that going on.
We're trying to find them, but thus far we have not seen that. I mean, that was actually one of the things we were pretty excited about early on. And you know, we had enough data where I thought, boy, we should be able to sort of see these things. But part of it is explained by the fact that a lot of these, we're only doing the top 100 hits each day. Secondly, we when you get a video that has you know, John McCain, it might actually have lots of other people in it, and so it might actually not be directly about John McCain, but because it was a debate, it had all the Republican candidates in it, and therefore they're all going to show up, and so that appears in all of their hit lists here. Now we've actually done a relevance study in which we, by hand, looked at 2,000 of these videos and tried to make judgments about, is this really about McCain, or was it mainly about a debate, or was it mainly about Ron Paul, or who are some of those other guys? So we're trying to get at that. That's actually not our main objective, because we're trying to deal with the archiving. I'd love to collaborate with folks here who have those sorts of interests. We have the data. There's people at Georgia Tech in the journalism school there who have actually downloaded our data, and one student there who's working with Shrag Shah, one of our doctoral students. So you know, we'd love to see people start to look at this data more intensively who actually know what the heck they're doing. Because all we do.
Maybe, I mean, if you're talking about archiving, which to me is like vertical, that versus horizontal, it seems like if you were trying to archive it, you might get a very different answer to the question you asked about how should we serve it out if you and your fellow, you know, professors did it versus your graduate students or your undergraduates. It might, in fact, maybe it's an old-fashioned way of looking at it.
No, that's actually very important. That's the notion of authority and collection of them. What the archivists call appraisal. You know, what do we keep and what don't we keep is an intellectual decision that has long-term historical importance. And that's why if it's a government archive, there are retention schedules that say exactly you must save all of this. Then it becomes more of a perfunctory task. But in this kind of thing, it's much more of an intellectual, and it's going to have human bias in it. The thing that we're hoping is that because storage is cheap, we're getting as much of this as possible. We're going to be able to save as much of it as possible so that people in the future can have more to work from. The Internet Archive is also doing this, and the Library of Congress is doing this. They're our partners on this project. So we're actually comparing the crawls that the Internet Archive does, which is really a strict crawling, and the Library of Congress and our project are doing queries. So we're starting with these queries. We'll have these 3 enormous data sets, and we're going to start looking at comparisons and trade-offs for, as a collection development strategy, what would make most sense, both from an intellectual point of view, but also a cost point of view. So this data is there, and it's hopefully going to persist. And so we certainly would welcome folks who actually have done this in a more sane and sort of controlled way in the past, because we're just working as hard as we can to get it. I mean, these crawls take all day. I mean, and so our machines are working away every day, and as soon as it stops, it's time to start again. Now, I mean,
and storage is cheap, so you can just.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not free, but it's becoming. I mean, terabytes are pretty inexpensive nowadays, and so we're probably pushing up around 1.5 terabytes only with all our video. And so that's and they're petabyte display or storage nowadays. The Internet Archive has many petabytes. So this is possible. All right, I want to shift to the last project and then try to wrap up because I know I'm close to the end of my time since Shri took so long introducing me. So there's one other sort of project that sort of dovetails with this, and these are all related. In my mind, it's all open video. Okay. about a year and a half ago, we were, actually maybe before that, before Google bought YouTube, we had an agreement, a hosting agreement with Google to take some of our open video data and provide it to them. They were desperate to just get as much video as they could, and so we said, sure. And then I kept saying, well, send me money. You know, you should find a student or two. And eventually they did. And they bought Google or YouTube around the same time, and so we ended up working with their YouTube sort of division. And one of the things that YouTube was interested in doing is to create university channels. And so Berkeley was the first university channel, and I think we were the second. And the idea was get us a bunch of video that is university made, right? That reflects, you know, something that's kind of quality. It's not just all that crap that people put on YouTube. They didn't say it that way. Ooh, and I didn't really say it that way.
We're recording you.
It's not ephemeral.
I know.
Yeah, it's not ephemeral.
It's not ephemeral. Well, that's part of my point, is that nothing is anymore. And that's going to be the last slide, I think. So the question about, if you're going to have a channel, and I would hope that the journalism school and the communications studies department here should be leading this. You can record that. The central office here in campus is actually twisted their arm, and they're actually have agreed that they're going to sort of take on this role of being the sort of university channel. Because YouTube doesn't actually want every department to have its own channel. It doesn't actually make a lot of sense. I mean, really, centralization here actually, I think, scales and matters. And I'll tell you some good reasons why. So I agreed to do what I called the Information in Life series, which was as innocuous a term as I could come up with that could mean anything. And basically, we've recorded lectures at SILS, from my Biblio, some from Public Health, and I did interviews with a bunch of UNC faculty, about 25 or so interviews around campus, mainly at SILS, but also as many people as who would answer my email and agree to talk to me. We went in with just, you know, camera, sat down, and I asked some questions about what do you do, and, you know, what do you teach, and what's your research, and how do you use information. And there's some really interesting interviews. Carolina Week, which you all know about, actually has been posting videos to YouTube, and what we need is to have some coordination there, because what I do is every once in a while I'll remember to go in and find the newest ones and add them to our playlist so that they're actually on the University Channel site. That just needs coordination. Global Health actually has started a playlist, and I think they're going to get real active on this. And the sort of news service is actually interested in how this can sort of play out for university news and publicity. But there's a bunch of policy issues that have emerged. I just finished a paper for educational technology that sort of reveals some of the problems as well as potentials here. So it is a collection development issue. You know, do we have a campus gatekeeping system that says this is official university content and it can go on? I don't want to be that person. I don't have that sort of time. Somebody needs to say, and I think it should be distributed to departments and say, if the department says this is put this up, then the central office should put it up, and for the main channel. There's all sorts of branding issues here, and that, you know, the university wants its logo, and then the department or school wants its logo, and, you know, that's all got to get dealt with. I don't want to deal with that either. There's also all kinds of instructor ownership issues. So interesting things happened. Larry Grossberg over in Com Studies was one of the interviewees, and if you know Larry, you know how entertaining and engaging he can be. People are asking to use the interview in their dissertations in England. I mean, they're sending us email, would it be okay? And, you know, Larry said, of course, sure, why not? You know, Brian Sturham, one of our professors who teaches storytelling, he did a lecture on the theory of storytelling. Went viral, 17,000 views in about a 3-week period. He's getting emails. He's getting invited to be on grants. He's getting invited to give lectures. People want to use it in their dissertations. he said to me the other day, I've gotten more mileage out of this video I did in 1 hour than in anything I've ever written in my life.
Yeah, all told, put together.
Yep. So that's the positive side. There's some other sides as well. When the Eve Carson tragedy occurred, the first night of the right after the memorial, the original Meeser talk, we put up that memorial service, and we allowed comments. And I think that happened about 11 p.m. that night. By 6 a.m., there were about 100 comments already. And the first sets of comments were, as you would expect, oh, this is so tragic. And then the comments started to shift, came in, oh, you Americans and your guns, and when are you going to do something about this? And then by the time the morning sort of rolled on a little bit more, it got incredibly racial. People were posting things I can't even imagine people think, let alone would type into a computer and put out there on the web. Mm-hmm. We turned the comments off less than 24 hours after the first posting. And so we learned kind of this, oh my God, you know, when is it appropriate to allow this kind of social interaction, this kind of commentary, this exchange, and when do you have to moderate it? So this becomes a real issue about the medium. The medium will get you attention. If your YouTube video goes viral, a lot of people are going to watch it, and they're going to want to get a piece of you. Now, if you got time on your hands, that might be great. If you're kind of close with your time, then you got to make a lot of choices, and just filtering out all of the requests, all of those things, can itself become kind of a significant burden. Now, is it worth it? Well, I think it is, because think of the reach you now have as a professor or as an instructor or as a student to get your ideas out. We're talking about global. I have a lecture up there where I had email from someone in Italy who said, I'm attending your course, but I can't read the PowerPoint slides. Could you put them on the web? Attending my course? Well, I was just watching this lecture, right? And should I put my PowerPoint slides up now? I don't know. Do we need to charge them tuition? I mean, how does all that work? Do I need to even respond? And so, I now have like 3 minutes in my life affected by this one email that I don't want to totally just ignore. And and that's only a video that's only been watched 500 or 700, less than 1,000 times. Imagine when you get into thousands or hundreds of thousands of views. Some of the Berkeley videos by really famous professors, I mean, people are watching them all over the world. They're taking biology, they're taking physics at MIT, because this stuff is available. And so we have a whole new kind of set of opportunities and challenges for teaching and learning. I mean, we need some real management kinds of policies at a campus level. I don't hear anybody talking about this. I hear them avoiding it. It seems to me that the journalism school and comm studies should be out there leading the charge. So here's my challenge to you. Put it on the stick. So let me get back to the high-level stuff again. I think what's happening here is we're at the beginning of a paradigm shift in how we think about information and communication. There's lots of content out there to reuse now. Ranging from professionally developed stuff with very high quality to just web security cam stuff, to all the stuff in between done by 10-year-olds. We're in a capture everything mentality, which blurs the public-private boundaries. So who wants to be a politician now? I mean, there are webcams in the bathrooms, for God's sake. I want to get a big lead shield and just kind of walk around in it to be sort of private. And that's what it's going to be. Killer app is becoming, I have a standing PhD dissertation deal. If you come into my program and you're 25 years or older and you can become invisible on the web, you get a dissertation. You get a PhD. Think about what that would entail to actually become invisible on the web. Today, you know, I have a couple of constraints. You know, you have to be like a, I won't tell you all. no one has
Let's get to that actually. Tell us that.
Well, I mean, one of the constraints is you have to have used computers. I mean, you know, you can't have sort of just, you know, walked out of the jungle someplace. The 25 years is kind of arbitrary, but I mean, it's really hard. I have one student who was pretty close. He was pretty excited about it. He's studying privacy on the web, so but he's given up.
So you're saying if you've ever been on the computer, you will forever be on the computer?
Well, if you've ever been on the web, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having a name like mine with 11 letters and very hard to say, I used to hate it. God, it was awful growing up like that. A lot of things rhyme with that you don't like. And
Marchionini.
then you get into high school and it even gets worse. But now it's actually really good because it's pretty singular. In the United States, it's actually is singular, except for my kids. In Europe, there are a lot of them. A little aside. There's some other stuff going on here. This notion of tags or annotations are now becoming non-textual. And so that's where our surrogation work, our multimedia surrogates come in here. And this is also beginning to blur, as I mentioned earlier, this boundary between primary and secondary, tertiary, n-ary kinds of materials. And you know, what's what? What's the original? You think about who had the original idea. So right now, when you review manuscripts for journals, for the best journals, they all use some sort of manuscript management system. Most of these have ratings for reviewers. Did you know that? Yeah, so, you know, edit these journals and, you know, you could say it was on time is usually, you know, that's easy. It was a good review. I claim that the editors very soon will be writing tenure and promotion letters. I know I've written immigration letters for people in computer science because of transactions on information systems. And it's because that whole process is not only getting recorded, but it's persistent. And when we get to multimedia stuff, it's not just the textual information, but it's visual, audio, sensory, all other kinds of, I haven't even talked about sensors in the environment. You can take this whole talk and sort of take out video and say heat sensors, radiation sensors, and I think you have the very same sorts of issues arising. What I think will become really interesting, and this happens now on the bus or on a train or something, and you're talking to someone, and you say, yeah, I was at this meeting the other day, and they showed this really interesting demo, and they whip out their cell phone and show it to you as a video. Does this ever happen to you? Yeah, it's happening more and more, right? So what does that mean? It means that our conversations are now becoming more multimedia, that our conversations themselves are starting to take on properties that incorporate these other media. We're not very good at it yet, and the tools are terrible, but they're going to get way better. So we now, I used to be able to have glasses that would allow me to like read my email and walk around. I never did this, but I've talked to people who do. It's weird. But now they have contact lenses.
No.
Oh yeah, yeah. So the University of Washington, just engineering school, just contact lenses that will allow you to, so I mean, you know, you basically have the projection of a screen that as you're walking around.
So you look like you're paying attention to me, but you're actually reading your email?
You know, you can tell. If you're talking to these guys, you're walking down the street, and all of a sudden they're gone. You know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, right now, it's easy because they got a little camera extension on their glasses, but yeah, well, think about all your students. What are they doing? You think they're listening to you while they're sitting there with their laptops? You know, they're on Facebook, talking up their buzz. And so more and more, we're going to have this kind of conversations that are going to include new kinds of media objects that probably are themselves going to be made into other media objects. So the capture everything gets even worse, because now even your sort of conversations on the bus are, might as well put them on the web. Ultimately, the boundaries between creating something, searching for it and finding it, retrieving something, and actually sharing something or communicating are being blurred by these kinds of digital bits that are representing all of our information and communication objects. So that's a sort of high-end, high-level kind of, I think, where we're going. We're a long ways from that, so don't get too nervous yet. But a lot of interesting things going on. I hope I've provoked you a little bit. I hope you'll get involved in trying to think about some of these medium other than text and video even, to communicate better, to do better research, and make the world a better place. Thanks.